My name is Claudia, and my brother's in active addiction. My brother is Henry, and he is a heroin addict. The earliest memory of my brother would have to be cooking chicken wings. My brother loved to cook chicken wings, and he had the most amazing sauce ever. From there, it kind of ranges from he used to take me to the park. We used to go shopping together. We would actually walk across the street often just to go to like a Subway or a Safeway or anything like that. The best memories that I can think of my brother would be when I went to visit him in prison. There is probably the most time I've ever seen him sober. He would look us in the face while we talked. I mean, it was more of like a normal conversation. Anytime that he was using, he rarely ever made eye contact or anything like that. So it's kind of there. When I was younger, I was kind of more of a burden to my brother. I always wanted his acceptance. I always wanted him to be around me. But most of the time, my brother was doing drugs. And a lot of the time, I never noticed it. I never, ever thought my brother was doing drugs or high or loaded. But the evidence was clear. All over my room, there would be straws, burnt spoons. I mean, even as far as to find syringes in hidden places like the closet, the cabinets. I mean, anywhere that I wasn't, there was something hidden all the time. And I didn't see it. As a child of 6, 7, 8, I only saw that my brother was moody, aggressive, and very secretive, but I never saw him actively abuse the drug. My mother, she knew when my brother was doing drugs or under the influence. I was not. She would remove door handles. She would try and keep me sheltered as much as she could. But I mean, the evidence was there. He would get so aggressive and rage to the point where we would be stuck in my mom's room just while he banged on the door. So she had like double padlocks. I mean, we even had like the police station and 911 on speed dial in her room. I mean, it was really, really that intense. And my mother couldn't do anything. My mother was disabled. She had rheumatoid arthritis. So being aggressive or being disciplinary for my brother, it never happened. Not even once or twice. And that's how he would end up back in jail. His aggression got the best of him, and it was just a very uncomfortable situation. All the time, he would be gone for days, binges, drug binges. He would shut off his phone. He would disconnect himself from the world, and my mother and I thought that he was dead half the time. Sometimes he would just steal her car, and we wouldn't see him for days. And being a disabled mom, raising a daughter on her own, she needed the car. And unfortunately, she had to call the cops on him. She is never proud of calling the cops on my brother. But when it came to my safety and my life, my mom had to do something. She had to put her foot down. And she did that as best as she could. I really had to reflect on my younger age or my younger experience to even understand that my brother was abusing drugs. To me, it was just his normal behavior. You know, I thought that he just didn't like me or he didn't want to be around me, but it probably was the fact that he was using drugs that he didn't want to be around me. He refused to look at me at all, just because his mind was probably somewhere else. I clearly knew the difference but when he was abusing marijuana to abusing meth or to abusing heroin. It shone completely. He liked me when he was smoking marijuana, was never around any time that he was abusing meth. And when he did come around, I noticed it, like the scabs on his arms. There's a certain thing with your jaw that kind of is noticed. Only one side of his jaw tends to work, almost like he's being lazy about his speech and he slurs his speech. But again, that took me years to identify and understand. To me, I just thought he was my brother and he was just mad at me, you know? But that's just kind of the way it was. He never drank, he never smoked cigarettes, but when it came to marijuana, meth, or heroin, Henry did it all. Drug addiction is a cycle, so oftentimes Henry would be involved into drugs heavily, like being missing for days on days, for weeks. Then he would come home and talk about how he didn't want to be on it, he was just doing it to be normal. This was something that he didn't want to do anymore. So we would try to help him through, but sure enough, when those withdrawals hit, my brother was gone, ghosted the situation. He would go and try and find a connection to get more. And my mom being disabled and me being so young, we just didn't understand, nor could we figure out what to do for him. My brother has the greatest potential that I've ever seen anybody have, and yet he has squandered it away with his drug addiction. It is quite a tragedy, but we're hoping that he gets better. Lately, as of like the last 5 years, my brother, he moved back to his hometown, and he continued his heroin addiction, and he relapsed, obviously, but he relapsed while driving a car in a residential area. And this is like one of the moments of my brother's life when he realized that he didn't want to be an addict anymore, and that literally his addiction was out of control, that he wanted to be sober, he wanted to live a sober life, and yet the drug had a hold of him stronger than anything that I've ever seen in my whole entire life. He had the world, he had beautiful kids, a wife that stuck by his side, a family that is willing to do anything for him, just needed one phone call. And going home to babysit his younger daughter, he decided to shoot up with heroin, knowing that it would take him, 5 minutes for it to kick into his system. He shot up, started the car, and that's all he remembers. But what Henry really did was he OD'd at the wheel, ran through 2 stop signs, and smashed into 2 parked cars, literally 2 blocks from his own home, to where his daughters and sons were playing outside. They actually saw the car hit. It was really, really devastating. Of course, the emergency, ambulance were called, and at that point, Henry was ready to go into rehab again because of the situation. But by then, it seemed almost like it was too late. By then, it just seemed like his deceit and his lies just took over him. My brother never wanted to talk to me about drugs and alcohol. He never wanted me to realize that he was doing them at all. So anytime that I was able to sit down and talk to him, he was already high. For my birthday, my recent birthday, I went back to my hometown because I wanted to celebrate it with my family, my mom and my brother. And he was doing well, actually. He had been a month or 2 sober, so I was really, really excited to hang out with my brother because he was sober. For once in my lifetime, he was sober. It didn't work out. He ended up losing his job. He stole my mom's car and left my mother, myself, and my aunt at a bar. And he didn't contact me until the last day that I was going to leave. But I never gave up hope on my brother. I loved my brother from the beginning. So finally, when he got home and I had a chance to talk to him, I went over there alone, and we had an eye-to-eye talk. But the problem was he couldn't look at me. He couldn't look at me in the eyes, and I knew from that moment that he was already high. The situation escalated. We needed the car back to take me to the airport, so my aunt and I went over there, and he was again completely high, and they got into a fight. They got into a fist fight, and it was really, really, really bad. She was trying to tell him that they needed the car and they needed the keys right away, and I was outside waiting next to the car so we could leave, and I hear ruckus. I hear like stuff falling over, a whole bunch of different stuff, and I immediately got up. I was so scared. I stepped in there, stepped between them, threw my hands and said, "This is not the way it should be at all." And I pulled my aunt out of his house while they were fighting. We got into the car, we left, and it was like chaos. My brother was left alone to do drugs. And we had gotten out of there with the keys, and that's all we could have expected from my brother, you know? But never for once have I ever blamed him for that moment. Yes, blame was called for, but I never blamed him. I knew that he had a sickness. I knew that he had a disease. And when stressful situations occur, my brother uses. His triggers are like money, stress. Like as soon as he has money in his pocket, every paycheck, even like income tax, as soon as he has extra money, he blows it on drugs and just destroys his life in literally 2 weeks. My brother is back to using heavily, nearly ODing all the time. And it's sad because no one wants their money held for them. No one wants someone always looking over their shoulder. And for my brother, it's like it has to happen. Anytime he gets any extra cash, he spends it on drugs, you know? And it's not like he even wants to. It's just an urge. It's just a trigger. Something in his brain tells him, above all else, go get a fix. And it hurts. You know, it hurts everybody who cares and loves for him so much. It hurts. Recently, this year, my mother decided to bring my brother in her home. She thought that she could watch over him because she's disabled and she has time to watch over him. That was completely the wrong idea. It just gave my brother the option to manipulate her, and it happened. You name it, he cleaned out her bank account, took all of her money, stole her car, got a whole bunch of drugs. And like, it wasn't even just all on heroin this time. It was literally mollies, ecstasy, meth, heroin, anything that he can get his hands on. He loaded up with all of my mom's money and went into her basement 4 days. They found him there. His phone was off, and they had no idea where they went. My mom went down to get winter clothes. There was my brother. Literally, the needle hanging from his arm disturbed her completely. She had no idea where he was, and it was literally like 10 steps away from her. How crazy is that? Completely crazy. But my mom never gave up hope, and nor could I. We just loved him too much, and he has so much potential. So my mom convinced him to really go through with it. You know, she'll help him with the withdrawals, she'll help him there. And I crossed my fingers from a distance because I'm literally like millions of miles away from them. I'm completely on the opposite side of the continent, so that just happens, you know? So all I could be was just a really good phone support. Unfortunately, I taught my mom how to use Skype, and at like 2 o'clock in the morning, their time, she called me through Skype, and I thought that it was going to be, oh, my mom's just out having a good time, you know, just a simple drunk message. No, she was in the thralls of my brother's withdrawals, and she was showing me with the pad that they had what my brother was going through. He was stabbing his legs with pens, knives, objects because he thought things were coming out of his body. His skin itched and tingled. He was vomiting everywhere. And all I could do was sit back and just pray that he'd be okay. You know, people tell me that you can't die from opiate withdrawals. What I seen my brother go through, near death. He was pale as a ghost. Chills, sweating profusely. He was on the floor curled up in a ball, all because he didn't have any money to get any more junk to put in his veins. It's horrible what this addiction to heroin does to you. It completely changes you. And I rarely ever see my brother sober. I don't even know who my brother is. I just know that he has potential to be what he's not, and that's an addict.